Was her second half performance and some three-point shots that made it happen.
Women who look like me deserve to feel seen, heard, and above all else, protected.
And our special guests today are
Gabrielle Union and Carrie Champion.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Simone and I'll be your host tonight. I am so excited to dive into More Than a Dream, an initiative started by 4 incredible women on the UCLA women's basketball team. And I am joined by them now. We're here with Lauren, Charisma, Michaela, and Cam. How are you guys doing?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited to see you all. We are obviously here to talk about More Than a Dream, and I just have to say I've loved getting to know you guys over the past, I guess since the summer, the past few months, and seeing how More Than a Dream has grown into what it is now with like Bruin Table Talk and everything. So I'm so excited to hear from you guys, and I am especially excited to hear about your most recent conversation with Gabrielle Union. Hello. I cannot wait to hear all about everything you guys have been doing. So I firstly just want to kind of give a background on what Bruin Table Talk is, what More Than a Dream is for anyone who has yet to hear about the amazing work you guys have been doing. So would one of you mind kind of explaining the mission statement behind More Than a Dream?
Yeah, of course. So More Than a Dream kind of started probably a little bit back in the pandemic, the beginning stages of the pandemic, after the killing of George Floyd. We felt that we need to come together just as a unit, as a team, to really just use our platform, because obviously what was going on was wrong, and we felt like as athletes we had this platform to use. And so that's kind of how More Than a Dream came together. We wanted to highlight just Black excellence, Black people, Black culture, but also reveal just the struggles that Black people go through on a daily basis in this country. And so through More Than a Dream, we did create Bruin Table Talk, where we sit and talk to a whole bunch of notable people. Like you said, we've had Gabrielle Union. We've also had Baron Davis, Earl Watson, Christine Simmons, and a few UCLA alumni, just to name a few. And so it's been so cool to be able to just go through this journey with some of my closest friends and just really amplify Black voices, because at this time it's so, so imperative.
What would you say is a moment over this past year that made you feel, okay, I need to do something about what's going on today?
Yeah, I think for a lot of us, right after George Floyd and just seeing how public his murder was, and just being able to see his death on camera on social media, just sitting at home, it just struck a nerve for all of us. And I remember we were talking to each other and we FaceTimed each other. And though as Black women, you've seen it happen, and there's been different protests throughout even just our time as teenagers, this one just definitely felt different. And so I think even the pandemic, it just heightened things because you're stuck at home and that's all that's playing on the news and that's all you're seeing around you. And so that's when we decided that we just wanted to do more. And we all were a part of protests in our hometowns, but we still wanted to do more. And we know that there's like a cycle usually in our country that as the news dies down and as the hashtags start to fade, that the conversation fades. And we really wanted to make sure that this time around that we weren't a part of things just dissipating until the next hashtag was created. So that's definitely where this conversation began, and where these education moments and just where this initiative is really born from, because we really do want to keep the conversation going.
Good. I love that so much. And honestly, the summer is what really pushed me to finally speak out and want to help be a part of the change, because things clearly aren't changing if people don't do more. So I just want to say thank you to all of you for the work you guys have put in and the courage you guys have to share your own stories. And just getting into that, I have absolutely loved hearing about all of the voices you have been amplifying with Brewing Table Talk. It's become my latest obsession. Everyone knows I watch like every episode. I love them. But your personal stories to me are just as interesting and just as moving. So I want to kind of dive into each of you a little bit and give you guys the opportunity to share what makes you you. And we'll start with you, Michaela. I know you come from a bit of a Nigerian background, and so I'd love to hear a little bit of that. And when you kind of realized just because two people are Black doesn't mean we are the same, which people often fall to that assumption. So I'd love to hear about your first experience with that since being at UCLA. How was that for you?
Yeah, of course. First, I love that you love our Brewing Table Talks. Yay.
Love it, girl.
Love it. Yes, like you mentioned, I'm Nigerian American. Both of my parents immigrated here at different points of their lives from Nigeria for different reasons. My dad came here on a track scholarship to Missouri, while my mom came and immigrated with her family just to have a better life, have a better opportunity in the States. And so, like you said, growing up, it was a little bit different for me being Nigerian American. Like I knew I was Black, like my skin color was Black, but it was definitely a different experience for me. And like you said, I think that sometimes gets just not noticed as much. You just see a Black person and you think, oh, they're Black. And so a lot of my experiences were very different. I probably grew up very different than Cameron, Charisma, and Lauren being American Black people versus me being a Nigerian American. Just there's different cultures. I definitely was hit with just a culture shock at some points with different types of people that I interacted with. And so it was definitely different. And for me, it was kind of hard because felt like I was stuck in the middle a little bit because there was like a collision of cultures where I was like, I'm Nigerian American, but I really wasn't raised in a Black American family. And so to kind of get all these experiences and not really understand it to its fullest extent, that was definitely really tough for me. And it kind of took me coming to college to really realize just those differences and really embrace those differences. And so, yes, I'm a Black woman. I'm also Nigerian American. I love Black culture. I love Nigerian culture, and they're both a part of me. And so I think it definitely took me a while to really embrace them to the fullest extent. But I think just having this platform with these people has definitely made that so much easier.
Good. I love that. And I remember you telling us a story about a Thanksgiving meal you had when you were like, oh, whoa, we are different. What was that like for you?
Yeah. So in like our Nigerian family, like I usually had Nigerian traditional dishes. And so what that is consisted of is fufu, which is kind of like a powder-ish flour that you kind of dip into stew that has curry. There's like a bunch of different things that I usually had on Thanksgiving. I never really had the American traditional Thanksgiving. And so one year I went with my friend and he was American and I had American like soul food. And I was like, what is this? Like, I am not used to this. There was greens, there was fried chicken, there was sweet potatoes. And I was like, I'm not used to this. I was like my first time and I was like 18 years old. So it wasn't like it was like I was a little kid or anything. And so it was definitely different. And I was like, wow, like I definitely have never had any of these things. But now I love soul food. Like they can all tell you I love soul food. I love cornbread. I love it all. So I'm super grateful for that experience because I don't feel like I would have branched out if it wasn't for that experience.
I love that. And that's so important, I think, for people to hear because tell me if you guys relate to this, but I just feel like Black people of color in general, are just so often put into a box that's almost, with so many presumptions about who they may be, what background they came from. So I think it's so important to hear even like simple stories like that, where it's like, whoa, I didn't even know what like Black soul food was. And people may have that expectation of you when they come to your house for Thanksgiving. You're like, no, honey, it ain't gonna be like that. So I'm in that way. Cam, would you mind talking to us a bit about your experience? You've spoken with us before about feeling like you had to go through code switching a little bit, what that means, and just your experience with not feeling Black enough for certain Black spaces or too Black for white spaces, because that's probably something we can all relate to a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So my entire childhood, I was in predominantly white Christian the upper class, like either middle school, high school, just my entire life, a lot of private school education for me. So I was always in spaces where I didn't fit in. I vividly remember like in elementary school, I was like one of two Black girls in the entire like elementary school. Or like being in high school, we had a group of 20 like Black kids. It was just rode tight together because we're like, okay, we only have us, we're only gonna stick together. Because on a like day-to-day basis, I was, like you mentioned, code switching. And basically code switching is I'm changing like my personality, the way I talk, the way I present myself in order to fit into different spaces. So for me, I was specifically doing it to fit in with my white classmates. It just made my life easier. I didn't have to hear anything from teachers. I didn't have to just deal with the almost stereotype of the Black woman stereotype. Oh, she's being loud, she's being aggressive. It was just easier for me to turn it all off, be a completely different person. So like in 2016, when the Whip and Nene was like huge, all these like dancing songs, like all my white classmates were doing it like in class all the time throughout the school. And I wouldn't do it because I'm like, as soon as I start doing it or me or any of my other Black friends start doing it, it's going to be an issue because it always was an issue when we started to just try to embrace our culture instead of seeing it being appropriated by other people. So I was always in that weird predicament, like, okay, I have to be white in this space. Okay, I can switch it around. My little small bubble of Black friends, I'm like, that's a safe space. I could be Black here. Okay, gotta go switch back to being a little bit more white here. And like, it was just always a teeter-totter of like, what Cameron are you gonna get today? So like, I never really got a chance to find myself until like I got to college because I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just be whatever Cameron wants to be when I get here. It's gonna be a new space, a new beginning. I'm gonna not have to do all that again. So I just really struggled with like an identity crisis almost in high school, for surely because I just had to go into different spaces trying to be different people because I wanted to please people and just fit in.
Mm-hmm. How have you seen yourself grow in that since you've been in college? You're a sophomore now, right? Mm-hmm. So how freeing has it felt to be able to be like, okay, now I am just 100% me, and that what you see is what you get?
It's so wonderful because I've gotten to a point where I don't care anymore. I am unapologetically a Black woman at all times, in all spaces, will do whatever I want. I went natural going into college. I would have never done that in high school. My teammates see it all the time. There are days I just walk in with a big afro because I didn't feel like doing anything to it. That's just things I would not have been bold enough to do in high school because I'm like, that's going to cause a lot of issues. And now I just don't care about if there are issues called because it's me. Like, you want me here, so you're going to get all aspects of me, natural hair me, afro me, like whatever I see fit for myself. I'm going to walk in the room and just have that on me because that's who I am.
I love that. Can anyone else relate to that, or anyone else have that moment of where you're like, no, I'm going to be who I am. I'm not gonna apologize for it.
I think the hair, I think she hit the nail on the head. I feel like you kind of have like that's like your coming to Jesus moment when it came to like being a Black woman for so many of us. And it's like that shedding of, I'm not wearing my hair straight. I'm not conforming to what you're telling me I should look like to be beautiful, to be accepted. So I feel like that has been cool. I've seen that with all of us, especially in our hair and just how that's such a big deal for Black women, especially. And so I love that she talked about that because that's so important. I have got to see that in all four of us, and there's moments where I don't care what you expect me to look like. You're getting a bun today, you're getting an afro today, whatever that looks like for us. So I love that she talked about that.
Love that. Charisma, I want to hear from you. Race isn't always the easiest thing to talk about, unfortunately. For some people, it just doesn't come as easy. And that's something I can personally relate to, just growing up in predominantly white spaces. That first conversation with someone who is not of color can be just uncomfortable. So what has your experience with that been like? Your experience talking about your friends on your team and people outside of basketball about your race?
Yeah, it's definitely been very interesting. I think growing up in middle school, I had a friend group who was predominantly Black. So once I went to high school, I went to predominantly white high school. So it was definitely a huge change for me. But I still had teammates who were Black and I still had friends that were Black. But it was definitely just different being mainly surrounded by white people. And kind of Kim talked about it a little bit, but some of like the microaggressions that you get was kind of a little difficult for me to deal with because when I did have like that Black friend group, it wasn't like mentioned or brought up as much. But like going into high school and having to deal with that, thank God I had some people that could relate to me, and I think that's just so helpful. Like having that friend group where it's like Cam said, she had her Black friends that she can be herself around. That was super important for me. But going into college, this wasn't really something that I was like super passionate about, or I didn't know that I was super passionate about. I kind of just was like, this is kind of uncomfortable. I don't really want to talk about these things. And I just wanted to just let it go, just let it happen and just keep moving on because I didn't always want to be that Black person who makes a big deal about something that seems small, but actually is something that's a lot bigger and that should be talked about. But as we started More Than a Dream, I think Michaela, Lauren, and Cam really just helped me find my voice and like being able to speak out about these things and have these hard conversations with some of my friends that I probably would have never had these conversations with. So just I'm grateful to just be doing this with both of them or all three of them, and just grateful for all the conversations and the people who have leaned in and who have tried to make a difference and who have tried to educate themselves.
That's so good. Have you guys noticed a difference in your team dynamic since you've started More Than a Dream and started initiating more of these conversations?
I think 100%. I think our coaches have always been super open about having these conversations, but you've definitely seen a shift since More Than a Dream was created. Just the willingness of our teammates and our coaches to want to have these conversations. For Black History Month, we decided to do educational kind of presentations, and so we had a topic every week, and so we talked about the Divine Nine of Greek life. We talked about the Tulsa Massacre. We talked about just what Black History Month was. And so just to see them really, like Charisma said, lean in and really want to learn and really want to ask questions about what all of these things are, it just is we're just so blessed to be in this position because we know that that's not the case for everybody. That's not everybody's situation when we're talking about things like race. And so I think our coaches and our teammates have definitely received More Than a Dream so well, and just above our expectations, I would say. And I'm super, super grateful to be able to have these people alongside of us.
That's so good. And that's so encouraging to hear, especially in the college space. Lauren, if you don't mind talking a bit about your experience with racial stereotypes. I think Cammie mentioned this a bit earlier, but I remember in our conversation earlier this summer, or whenever that was, quarantine timeline, you spoke about a fallout with a childhood friend over something along these lines. If you don't mind sharing your experience about that.
Yeah, so like pretty much the other girls, I grew up in a pretty white dominant neighborhood, the same high school and district that my dad grew up and came out of. So my family is super well known, and so we're one of those Black families, but that's just well received, and that from people of all backgrounds just kind of gravitate towards, especially my parents, and just the impact they've had on Kirkwood, especially. So friendship wise, grew up with a lot of white friends, and so I vividly remember just as you get older, conversations just beginning to shift. And as I was always raised to be really aware and just proud of being Black. My mom's family especially is really active in the NAACP. So education was just something I was always aware of. And so once I got older, those conversations kind of got weird and a little more just distant. And so I remember that one of my former friends, we had a conversation and she just kind of made a comment, just really stereotyping Black people. And I remember it kind of took me aback a bit, and there was kind of a conflict between us, and just it became a moment where I realized being articulate and being an athlete, at times people can kind of compartmentalize you as a different type of Black girl. And there's times that people separate you, like they accept you and they love you and they embrace you because you're not like those Black people and you're not loud like those Black people. And half the time you don't realize I'm not even being my authentic self. I'm just as loud when I'm home with my family trying to compete to talk over my dad. And it was just in that moment that it really became apparent to me just how you do have to be careful with who you're receiving, who you are taking in to think you're friends with, And we kind of had a blunt conversation of just making her realize, like, I'm Black just as much as she is. So when you're talking about why do Black people do A, B, and C, you're talking about me, you're talking about my sister, you're talking about my dad and my brother. And so I think that was just kind of a wake up call for me, just to be aware of, as different as we are as Black people, there's an allegiance that has to be there. And there's just a loyalty tie that I really felt compelled to. And that's kind of a big part with me for More Than a Dream, is just kind of sticking up and saying what's right and talking about that excellence and really spreading more of the truths about Black people. And as different as we are, there's so much great and there's so much to be celebrated within that. And so I think there's just so much in this country that's perpetuated in that, based on your experience, that sometimes can be misconstrued and it can be spun and made into such a negative narrative. And so I think that's what I love about these women. We have such different backgrounds and we were raised so differently. But I celebrate all three of them and that they have so much to bring to the table. And so I never want people to think that we're not those Black girls, because we are. And that's just it. That being Black women, being Black men, it's just something worth celebrating. It's worth learning about, and that it's really something more for you to dig into and to do more than just what the stereotypes and the negative stigmas tell you about us.
Good. Beautiful. Something I want to ask you guys, because it's just so funny as we're talking about stereotypes, and just we've all heard, the very common things, I'm sure. What are some things in regard to being Black that you wish people would stop asking?
Can I touch your hair? That's got to be like one of the top ones. Can I touch your hair? Or like they're like, oh, your hair grew overnight, like that type of thing. Like, come on, you guys know, like it did not grow overnight.
Yeah, and I would stay along that line. It's just like Black hair is just it's so impactful and so important to Black culture. Like even more than probably some white people even know, it's so important to our culture. So to continue to have these questions, or like, oh, you wear a weave, so you must be bald. Oh, you wear a wig, so you must not have hair. Like those assumptions, along with what Charisma was saying, like, oh, did your hair grow overnight? Or can I touch your hair? Like those things, like it's so much deeper than they even realize that, like, yeah, that should not continue to happen at all.
Yeah, mine for sure is like the speech. And like there's a fine line between really actually being complimentary of how I speak and I conduct myself, and that's great. But then I think there's a line when you can hear the shock. And there's sometimes I'll speak and people are like, wow, like you are really articulate. And it's like they're taken aback by it. And I think like just microaggressions like that are always bothersome, because like you had an expectation coming into it that I wasn't going to be able to speak English well. I wasn't going to be fluid in how I speak. So I think that's one that's always bothered me as I've gotten older. It's went from a compliment to like, oh, you're actually surprised I wasn't supposed to be able to conduct myself and speak to you well.
Yeah, Lauren took mine, but I also don't like the assumption that any Black person in college is automatically an athlete. No, we happen to be blessed enough to play sports, and we were blessed enough to get that scholarship, but I am fully capable of going to this school regardless of athletics, and just not assuming that, oh, he's at Yale, oh, he must be on the sports team, like he must have some help in some way. No, we are fully capable of doing everything anybody else can do as well.
Thank you guys so much for bringing a voice to that. Just a little moment of education, because I feel like those are questions I mean, who doesn't get asked those so often? And it's hard to have somebody just bring one voice. And so I feel like to have all of your input on it, it's so important. So I hope that our viewers could take something away from that. As you guys have been working through More Than a Dream, how have you seen each other grow throughout this process?
I think I've seen I feel like our team wasn't very like vocal unless called to do so. And so I feel like I've seen just the different sides of Charisma, Cam, and Lauren. I feel like we've been using our voices to this, just like the best potential that probably wouldn't have happened if we didn't create More Than a Dream. I know for me, I'm not a very vocal person, but I find myself getting better and having these hard conversations, getting better and doing things like this, and really speaking about these things that we're passionate about. And so that's how I've seen us grow. We've become more open to feedback, just more open to having these conversations, and really seeing all these perspectives and wanting to just get better and change for the better.
Yeah, I totally agree with her. being vocal, but I also think we have all fallen in love more with our Blackness over this process. All the research we've done on the history, all the did you know facts, we were like, wow, I didn't know that this person did this or this person did this. I think we had started to fall back in love with, like, not fall back in love, fall more in love with being Black and just like the magic of Black people in this world.
Yeah,
and that's part of the goal, right? No, I was just saying that's part of the goal, right? I mean, how beautiful that it's not just a tool for those who are not people of color, but also people of color. It's never too late to learn more about, where you came from and why we should love who we are. But go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's been cool to see all three of them kind of grow in just different pockets. Like Michaela said, she really didn't really want to be as vocal. So that's been cool to see. Like that's been something they've asked of her, even as like just an athlete. So it's been cool to see that even before she decided to talk on the court, like she found her voice through this social injustice. And so in turn, we've been able to see her be a more vocal leader, even in a basketball space. For Charisma, kind of the same thing. You didn't hear much from Charisma, but I feel like in this, like you really heard her speak up, even in our MTAD meetings. Like you'll hear her suggestions and stuff. If Charisma doesn't like it, you're gonna know Charisma doesn't like it. And so it's just cool to hear that potent opinion from her. And Cameron, we used to call her, especially in the beginning of this, we used to call her Malcolm X because Cameron was coming in hot. You were getting her opinion, and Cam like embodied unapologetically Black. And so it was cool to see even Coach Shannon and Coach Tasha, as they worked with us to kind of refine how we have to be able to reach all audiences at the same time. And so it's been cool to see Cam be able to shift from Malcolm X to Martin Luther King, just depending on who needs what from her. But it's definitely been cool to see them really step into all of who they are.
That's so awesome. I love that.
Just to add on, I just love how like during Black History Month, like that month, I think we all enjoyed it so much. Like every single thing, like every reason we're like, oh, it's Black History Month. We can do this because it's Black History Month. And it was just like so fun. Just like, I think we were just really like all the way to History Month, all come out on social media and turn out so well. I think that was just really cool.
Yeah, whose idea was that to kind of highlight a Black figure every day on social media, every week? It was so cool what you guys did on your social media to draw awareness to Black History Month.
I think it was a more so collective effort. We had been doing Did You Know Facts just every single Monday of every month. And so for Black History Month, we were like, look, like we know this is our month, we're gonna go all out. And so we actually compiled a list with all four of us. And we're like, who do we really want to highlight? We wanted to do from actors to actresses to athletes to singers to just anybody who we thought was really influential in the Black community. And so, yeah, it was a ton of work, but it's definitely rewarding just to see how people received it and just how much work we had put in, and just to get people to see like how much Black excellence there really is was really, really cool. And it taught us a lot too, because there were some people who we had to do the research for all of these people, and we were like, we didn't even know like the impact that they had. And so it definitely taught us something, but also all of our viewers as well.
That's so awesome. And I wanted to applaud you guys, first of all, for your coverage of Black History Month on Bruin Table Talk and with UCLA women's basketball, because you just really, it was so good. So much pride. And I just feel so proud of you all. So speaking of which, Black History Month, the celebrities you guys have been interviewing on Bruin Table Talk is so cool. I mean, I know it's a big deal for you all to have Gabrielle Union and Kara Champion on the show. So what was your reaction when you find out that they were coming on?
I guess I should start because I was the first person to kind of find out. So it was like one morning, the day after I put out to try to get Gabrielle on. I checked my phone, still nothing, a bunch of retweets and stuff, but nothing yet. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna get dressed, get ready for practice. And then me, Nick, and Cam, we usually go down together. So I was like leaving my room and I was like looking at my phone. I was like, no way. Like Gabrielle had tweeted back. I start screaming so loud, like I'm like jumping, screaming. And Nick is like slowly comes out the door and is like, what happened? And I was like, oh my gosh, Gabrielle, she retweeted. And then like we come together and we're like hugging and jumping together. And then next year you hear Kim like coming over, ringing the doorbell. And then we like tell her and we're like jumping. And then we get to the locker room and Lauren comes in and we're jumping and screaming and stuff. It was just so much fun and such a good moment because that was like one of our main goals for Brew and Table Talk, getting Gabrielle and getting Carrie champion. So it was just so exciting for us.
So I could see the excitement is oozing through the screen. It was so fun to watch. What was your biggest takeaway from that conversation?
I thought that Carrie had a different perspective. We always talk about how Black people are supposed to break barriers. We are always the first and just of doing things. And one thing she said is that sometimes it's hard to break barriers and be that first and be that only person in the room. And so that was definitely an interesting perspective because we always hear about women breaking barriers, Black women breaking barriers, Black people breaking barriers. And just to kind of hear her perspective of like, sometimes it's hard being the only one. And I think sometimes we can even just think about that sometimes in our past where maybe we've been the only one and how that has felt. And so for her to feel that on a more professional level just kind of puts into perspective like, yeah, it's cool to break barriers. It's cool to be the first Black woman to do something, to be in a space, but it is also really taxing. And so she was talking more so like she wants to bring young Black women up with her to be at that table with her. And so that was a really, really cool thing that I took away from the talk.
Yeah, kind of just touching on what Michaela just finished with. They both kind of touched on just as they've broken barriers and as they've risen to the fame that they've really acquired, just they want to make sure they turn and keep the door open, that they want to hold the door open for Black women behind them. And so that's definitely something I'm super passionate about. And I want to make sure that with all that basketball has done for me, I want to make sure that I turn around and I'm able to create opportunities and form my own different methods just to make sure I'm helping bring Black girls up behind me. So that was something that really just struck a nerve for me, just to realize that once you've accomplished all you have, you want to make sure that you then help elevate the next generation too.
Yeah, both of them actually touched on it as well. Almost the same idea about getting to the table, but sometimes it's better to create your own table than jump in just on one if it's going to compromise the person you want to be, the person, your like character. If it compromises bringing up other people with you, sometimes it might be harder, but it's better to create your own table than to just join another one.
Yeah, and I just love how they touch on that there's space for everyone. Like, it doesn't have to be just like, oh, there's one Black girl there already, like I'm not gonna make it. Like there's space for everyone, and it doesn't have to be like someone else. You don't have to bring someone else down to get to the top.
That's so good and such a good reminder. How have these different athletes and the former president of the Sparks, how have these big public figures that you've had on your show really elevated the conversations you guys have been having personally and on camera?
I think it definitely just gives a different perspective to just the Black lived experiences. Just like you said, Christine Simmons being the COO of the LA Sparks, to Earl Watson and Baron Davis, who went to UCLA, who were roommates, who were the first freshmen to start at backcourt at UCLA, just stuff like that. There's so many different experiences that Black people have went through. Like we said earlier, like we're so not one-dimensional. There's so many different sides to us. And so it's definitely been so cool to see those perspectives, see how people have influenced people before them. And just so I've had a great experience just listening to a lot of different perspectives. And I'm super grateful to be able to have the opportunity to have Brew and Table Talk.
Yeah, I mean, I've loved hearing some of them have such humble beginnings. And so like Christine Simmons shared that there was a point in college, she didn't really know what she wanted to do, and that she just knew your options were law school, med school, and beyond that, she just didn't know. I think it's kind of hard sometimes. You feel like in order for, as Black people especially, we have to have all our ducks in a row immediately. Like, and you have to know that next step. And there's just a certain pressure on you, and you just kind of have to walk around with a chip on your shoulder to succeed because there's such expectations for you to do the opposite. So it's just really affirming to hear what all they ended up accomplishing, who they are, and just how much we look up to them and how bad we wanted to be able to interview them, and to know that when they were in our position, they had no clue what they were doing, and they didn't know the impact they were going to go on to have. So for us to even be able to sit here at 21, 19, 20, and to be able to sit down and get such wisdom from them was super, super exciting, and just an experience I'll for sure always hold on to.
Do you guys have a favorite moment from any of these interviews outside of the impactful conversation you guys have been having? I know Kara Champion mentioned something about her oil she uses on her legs that she was going to send you guys. Did that ever come in the mail?
We're still waiting.
Shut up. But favorite moment, just something you didn't know about them individually that you learned in these conversations?
I think for me, seeing how much Baron Davis and Earl lit up about their kids, it just explained like Baron is over here just watching his kids play video games, and Earl's talking about his daughter and how she goes on just shopping sprees with his card, like just to see like the light up that they get talking about their kids and all the experiences that they had during quarantine was just super cool for me to like witness.
Yeah, and just go ahead, Nick, go ahead.
Okay, I think just the level of respect that I saw from Earl and Baron, but also Carrie and Gabrielle, just like them, those pairs together, you can just see that they're just so proud of each other. They're just like beaming when they're speaking about one another. And they're both obviously good friends on their own, and they've done so many things individually, but just to see them light up when they speak about each other, it just goes to show just like the Black experience and the Black magic that's being made when we're having these conversations.
Yeah, I was literally going to say the same thing. Definitely Baron and Earl, like their relationship was just so fun to see on Zoom, and just like that was the first time I really like talked to them. So just to see them light up about each other and just have such amazing things to say about each other was so cool to see. And then I just feel like most people didn't see this, but off camera, as soon as like we finished the Bruin Table Talks, like you wouldn't know, but like our faces were so lit up. We were screaming. We were so excited, just like because of how well it went. So I was just like really proud and just like happy about like how well they were going during Black History Month.
I love that. I love hearing the behind the scenes secrets too. Have you guys been able to see the fruit of what you've been doing just yet? Because what you're doing is truly so amazing. I know I've said it a few times today, but what you guys are doing really is amazing, and is such an amazing resource for people who aren't of color, people who are of color. We talked a little bit about the impact it's made on your teammates, but what are people outside of basketball from maybe back home saying when they see Bruin Table Talk popping up on their Facebook or Twitter feeds?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Lauren. Lauren, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I just think it's been cool, just like you said, people outside the program, just to hear them come up to us and they do want to know more. Me and Michaela were on a media call, and a reporter we talked to pretty often, she had been seeing snippets of our Black History Month educational series, and she just wanted to know, like, are you guys going to post the full versions? Like, can we hear more about them? So I just think stuff like that, we don't even realize how much people are engaged in. This woman who I met through Athletes in Action, she homeschools these 2 young white boys. And so she has, in turn, she changed one of the lessons to be specifically about Black history. She just took them to the Negro Baseball League museum in Kansas City. And so just stuff like that, like we don't realize just how many people are really in tune, and just the power of social media. And so it's been really rewarding, definitely, just to see the reach that we're having.
Yeah, I just would add on to that. Like Coach Corey told us that somebody that she knows was like on the men's side was actually like, oh my gosh, like I love you guys' Bruin Table Talks. And like this is on the men's basketball side. Like really, we don't really interact too much. And so for somebody of that caliber to come and tell Coach Corey like that we're actually doing something, it's definitely refreshing. And another basketball program had told one of our coaches, like, oh, we want to do our own version of Bruin Table Talk. So we just see the impact, and like, yeah, we didn't do this for any like pride or any clout or anything of that nature, but it's just cool to see the impact of what we're doing, because at the end of the day, that's what we wanted to do, is really amplify voices and really just let people see what the real Black experiences are. So it's definitely so cool and so refreshing to see that impact.
That's so good. It's a bit of a domino effect, right? I mean, people see that you're doing it and they're like, oh, we can do it too. And the more people start up little programs like this, the bigger it'll get and the quicker we'll hopefully see change. Now, where do we go from here to kind of wrap things up? I know, Lauren, you previously mentioned that you feel other programs on campus aren't even holding a candle to the work that you guys are doing as women's basketball players at UCLA. So what are some things that your team is continuing to do to continue to move the conversation forward? And maybe what are some things that you could see more of on other college campuses to really amplify more Black voices and bring awareness to the issue here?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest that we've really prided ourselves on, and that's an easy like beginning place, is I think just the educational piece. And so where we've been able to do it from us talking about our own personal experiences and having those types of hard conversations, to actual education and just presenting the history of our nation and just the real way that Black people have built this nation into what it is. And so I think just places and programs can just start there. I think there's just so many tools, and me and Michaela would sit down and make these Google slides, and there's just so many resources out there. And so I think that's just the easiest place to start. But I think just having the conversation, I think you have to swallow your pride and you have to come in with just a humble heart and just decide to hear as much as you hear out your Black athletes and also hearing out white people in the same way. And I think that's where our program has really pushed the envelope in that way, and that it's been more than just us talking at people, but we're actually having a dialogue and we're providing a space where people can honestly say, I just didn't know that. I wasn't raised to know that. I haven't been exposed to that. And because of that, we've been able to really change some standards, and they've been able to push themselves and be comfortable enough to educate themselves, but also in turn ask us questions so we can keep growing and changing together.
So good. Anyone else have any input on that one? What you would like to?
I would definitely agree. I think the conversations are definitely so important. And if you're not having conversations, there is not going to be any change. And it's important that the conversations are super uncomfortable because racism is even more uncomfortable. And the things that Black people have to deal with are even more uncomfortable than the conversations that are being had. And so I think people realizing that is super important, but also on a different note, I think that it's really important to know that athletes are so much more than just athletes. And as you can see with us, like, we're using our platforms because at the end of the day, when we take off our jerseys, we're no longer athletes, we're just Black women. And that's how society sees us. And so I think that's a good narrative to have, is like, athletes are not just meant to play basketball, play football, or do whatever else. They're meant to be people because they are humans when they take off their jerseys. And so those are two important things that I definitely would just hope to see as we continue to fight for change.
Amen. Now, the two of you, Lauren and Michaela, you're both seniors this year, right? So do you plan to continue to be a part of, do you plan to continue to remain a part of More Than a Dream, or do you hope to continue this on with younger people filling your shoes when you leave? I'm sorry to bring it to that topic.
I know that's such a hard question. I mean, like, we know, like, More Than the Dream it's like our thing, you know. Obviously, we're about to leave, so I fully trust Charisma and Cam with the reins of the initiative and the committee that we have. I have full trust that we will be good with More Than a Dream for years to come, even after they're gone as well. And so it's sad that it's coming to an end for us, but we know that this is just the beginning for More Than a Dream.
Yeah, that we just had a meeting the other day and just kind of prepping for next year. And me and Michaela just kind of had to hit them with a head tilt, like, this is y'all now. And so I think I'm super excited just to see what they take and run with it. And like Michaela said, I totally fully trust them with what all they're going to grow it into and just how the conversations will keep going. And I'm sure they'll call us to get help to throw something together, but they definitely are more than equipped to run it.
Well, Charisma, Cam, this is on you. How do you guys plan to move it forward? Or I guess what makes you most excited going into the rest of this year, next year, with More Than a Dream having been established now?
Well, first of all, they'll definitely be guests on Bruin Table Talk at some point in time because they'll be super successful. We got to have them back, a little throwback action. But I can't wait for when More Than a Dream can actually go out and touch the community, when COVID's over, when everything's going to work, because all of us have huge hearts to mentor kids. And I just know that's something that we've all wanted to do. And we definitely wanted to implement that into More Than a Dream. So I just can't wait till we can honestly just hit the physical world. It's no longer Zoom. We can start going, hanging out with kids, teaching them stuff, helping inspiring them and showing them that the sky's the limit, the world is theirs, and they can be whatever and whoever they want to be. So I just can't wait for when More Than a Dream can actually just get into the community and start building relationships there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like that was something that we really wanted to do this year, but COVID stopped us from doing that. But honestly, I'm really excited for more people to come into our program and to continue to share and just show them how we do things and continue to just like lead the way. And so when me and Cam are gone, we have people who are willing to do the same thing that Michaela and Lauren and Cam and I were doing.
Beautiful. So excited for you guys. I can't wait to see how More Than a Dream continues to grow. So for our viewers at home, what is their next step? A call to action. What do you hope viewers would take away from this conversation today?
I hope that viewers take away that Black people are so much more. We're not one-dimensional. And as you can see from just the four of us on this call, we're all so different. We come from very different backgrounds. But I think at the end of the day, we're all fighting for the same fight, equality, Black excellence, and just really emphasizing Black culture. And so I think that's something that I would definitely want viewers to take away. I hope that we're able to inspire you to tell a friend, to tell a friend, to tell a friend about the things that we're trying to accomplish, but also in your hearts that you're able to change something, or we're able to inhibit some sort of change in you if that change is needed.
Yeah, definitely what Michaela just touched on the end. I would just really hope that this conversation and just everything we've put out this year has really prompted you to just kind of want to educate yourself and just dig in more on your own. There's so many movies, there's so many books, there's podcasts, there's even just research and just Instagram pages, Twitter pages. There's just so much at really our fingertips for you to be able to educate yourself. And that just makes the world a difference. So much of what we see and that we're experiencing just stems from ignorance. It stems from decades of passed on ignorance. And so as much as that heirloom needs to be cut off, that it really starts with people doing their own personal work. And we'll keep doing our part and we'll keep putting stuff out and we're going to keep trying to lead the charge in that way. But the more people can take that personal accountability to check your own circle, to check your own heart, and to really decide where are you coming up short in that area, it'll make such a difference and we can progress and change so much faster.
Yeah, just to add on to that, for allyship and support just doesn't have to be watching the videos, retweeting, liking, that helps in a way for specifically us, but it's also supporting Black people in your immediate circle, potentially Black businesses in your areas. Like, in order for Black people and just equality in this nation to be there, minorities have to be brought up to the same tables that white people have held for so long. And we can't do that without help. We're kicking and clawing and trying, but we can't do that without help. So just the support in any type of way for minority people, for Black people, it can be anything. That's very helpful.
Yeah, and then kind of like Lauren said, just to check your hearts and just be aware of like what you do and what you say, because how you treat people is something that they're always going to remember. So just being aware of like the things that you say and just be cautious and just be aware.
So good, you guys. Thank you so much for joining us today and just sharing your heart and raising your voice. Before we go, I thought I would ask who maybe came up with the Brew and Table Talk theme song.
That is so funny that you asked. Because, okay, so have you ever heard of the show Moesha?
Girl, have I heard of the show Moesha?
Actually, you have to ask. But, so, like in the pandemic, like we were watching Netflix 24/7. So like that was like something that we were like, okay, we love Moesha. And so we were trying to come up with like a theme song. It took us forever. But we were like, what about Moesha's little jingle? And so we were like, okay, let's record it. And we were like, okay, this sounds pretty good. And so that's kind of how like the jingle came about. And then we kept it and we're like, yeah, this is it. This is it.
So good. Do you want to give us a little lesson on it and then we can kind of close out with it after it? So we can do a run through, you can teach us, and then we can.
Charisma got the steps. You got the steps, Charisma.
It's been a minute. It's been a cool minute. So usually I'll do the beat, And Nick, Lauren, y'all know how to sing it, right?
Yes, I don't know if it's gonna sound good over this, but you can sing it.
We should go one at a time. I'll take B. You take Lauren. You take the first T.
Okay.
Mick has the third T.
I'll do the beat.
Okay, and I'll finish the brewing table talk. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
B to the.
Sorry.
Wait. How many beats are you going? Honestly, you hit the beat and I'll catch it. I got you.
Okay. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Oh shoot! I don't remember the beat. I'm sorry. D to the front table top.
That's how it goes.
Sorry. It's been a minute.
I love it so much. Well, why don't we just end with that? Thank you all so much. This is so good. I'm so grateful for all of you. You're doing amazing things, and I can't wait to see what you continue to do. So thank you all for joining us at home, and this has been More Than a Dream.